So all about beavers. I love beavers. Oh, that's kind of, how does that screen look to everyone? Probably better. Can everyone see that full screen? I'm going to assume.
Yes, that looks great, Bonnie.
Okay, so beavers. One of my favorite animals, if not my favorite animal, and they are in all of our watersheds around here. And except I'm not seeming to be able to advance. There we go. My name is Bonnie Bell. I'm a volunteer ranger at Seneca Creek State Park and also a little bit at Patuxent River State Park. This is just on there because I've done this for them before. So what are beavers? Beavers are the largest rodent in North America. Their average size is pretty big, 40 to 60 pounds. That rivals like a Labrador retriever. The females tend to be bigger than the males. The largest known beaver in present day was 110 pounds. They tend to keep growing as long as they keep living. In the fossil record for North America, the ancestors of beavers were huge. They were the size of bears, like our little black bears, not the huge grizzly bears, but that's, you know, a 200-300 pound beaver is pretty big. Those earlier ones, there's no evidence that they were actually building dams or lodges. I guess if you're that big, maybe you don't need to. They mate for life and they have a lifespan of 20 to 25 years, even in the wild if conditions are good for them. So rodents, what are rodents? The main thing about rodents is it's all about the teeth. Rodent teeth grow continually because they get worn down so fast. Beavers depend on taking down trees for their winter food supply, so they need really strong teeth. So in the dentine layer, on the front layer of their incisors, and it's only on the incisors, not the back teeth, they have iron incorporated in their teeth for strength. And the teeth, top and bottom, kind of bypass each other and match, and so that they are sort of self-sharpening. These teeth just keep growing and keep being worn back, and they have a pretty sharp edge to them. Beavers are very, very well adapted for life in the water. They have very thick waterproof fur, which was unfortunately why they were almost extinct in all of the United States. Their ears and nose can close to keep water out. They have an extra flap of skin in their lips so that they can carry a branch in the water as they're swimming along and even going underwater, carrying that branch and not get a mouthful of water. Their rear feet are webbed to propulse them along through the water, not the front feet. That big, wide, flat tail is kind of a rudder for them swimming, and they have a third eyelid, just like you might see on dogs or cats. They have a third eyelid, but it will completely cover their eyes, and it's perfectly clear. That also engages when they're underwater to protect their eyes. So very thick fur to keep warm because they do not hibernate. They're out even in the cold, in the icy water. They are moving along. Their ears are pretty small, so their ears and their nostrils and everything can completely close down to keep the water out as they're swimming along and diving. This one's a really nice picture showing you the great big webbed hind feet. They have claws on their toes, and they actually have a double claw on one of the hind toes that is helpful for grooming. They do a lot of grooming to keep that fur in good shape because they need it for insulation. The tails, nice big wide flat tails, is mostly a navigation aid for water, not so much for propulsion. Beavers are the world's best engineer without a college degree. They are second only to humans in their ability to change their environment. This dam was on Long Draft Branch in Seneca Creek State Park. It eventually was at least, I would say, 5 feet tall. So the goal of the dams is to have deep water. Beavers depend on that deep water for safety. They are not very fast or agile on land, but in the water, nothing beats a beaver. They can stay underwater for 15 minutes. So anything that might attack them, if they can just grab it and go underneath and stay, they can drown a predator who may be even bigger than they are if they can grab a leg and go underwater. The entrance, this is a lodge that was on Long Draft Branch in Seneca Creek State Park. It's not active anymore. I can still find it, but it's not very obvious. The entrance is underwater, so they need that deep water for safety. So how do they build the dam? They are really very good at this. They arch the dam facing into the current. They embed the sticks into the river bottom with the upper end facing the current, so that as the water pressure comes down on the end of that stick, it tends to push it deeper into the riverbed, which just makes it more stronger. They'll add mud, rocks, more sticks, and just keep going until they have a nice dam. They check that dam every day for the sound of flowing water, and they repair it as needed. So beavers are nocturnal. They come out in the evening, and the first thing they'll do if they have a dam is just swim by along the dam, make sure everything's okay. If the dam has been breached for any reason overnight, they will, instead of feeding, they will spend the whole night repairing that dam, because that is what they really rely on for safety. So here's another dam on Long Draft Branch. We had a whole colony of beavers end up on there. It started with just one lodge, and that expanded to a total of 4 lodges and 6 dams like this one. This one was about 3 feet tall. The longest dam in the world, I just thought you might be interested in, is a half-mile long. It's in Alberta, Canada. It's in an extremely remote area, and it was found by Google Earth. No one knew it was there, and then somebody noticed this, and then they went back, and they actually did have photographs going back to the 1960s, and once they went back and pulled the photographs, they said, oh yes, indeed, this has been there a long time. The reason it's that long is, in fact, that this is a very flat area, so in order to get any depth, they had to build a very long dam. Someone actually decided they wanted to hike out and see this dam. It took 2 days of hiking to get this far. There were no trails. It's flat, it's swampy. And when they got there, it was midsummer. So the whole dam had been, all the mud had plants growing on it. So it was underwhelming from what I understand. So once you've got your deep water, you want a house. So they build a lodge. The lodge is built with a lot of their sticks and branches that they've eaten from. They'll use dead things for the branches. They don't cut dead things because they're only interested in live for food, but they'll use anything for building the dam. And at this one, if you look in the upper right, you can see a tree that they're working on for more food and building material. So here's an outline of what the lodge is going to look like. The entrance will be underwater. They'll come out of the water, and there'll be a small platform where they will eat, and they'll shake and dry off. And then the upper platform will be the main kind of living area, sleeping chamber. They will actually bring grasses and things in through the water and let it dry out on the lower platform to bring it up into the sleeping chamber. In the fall, they will plaster all over the outside of this with mud, just for extra insulation and also protection, because once that mud is solid, hard, and then it snows and freezes, even a bear is hard put to break into one of these, which is one of the few predators that they might have. So here is a lodge that has had mud put all over it, completely mudded over. It looks like everything's full of mud. This was on a small tributary of Great Seneca Creek up in the county section. It's between Watkins Mill Road and Brink Road. That colony has disappeared since this time. But at the very top, at the base of this tree, you'll see there's no mud. On the right-hand side, the mud goes all the way up to the tree, but this is where they've left a little bit of an opening for ventilation, because there could be as many as 10 beavers living in there. They need a little bit of ventilation since there's no windows. They will, if in areas where it gets very, very cold, on a really cold day, you might actually see steam rising out of there. It looks like they've got a little fire in the fireplace. So what do they eat? They are vegans. These days we would refer to them as vegans. They don't eat anything but vegetation. In the summertime, just like we do, they eat fresh things. You know, everyone likes to have a salad, so they're eating fresh leaves, cattails, aquatic plants. They will eat poison ivy. One of the first times I saw a beaver, it was actually out during the day, and I was close enough and I had binoculars. It was foraging in a small patch of a lot of weeds, and I said, what is it eating? So I watched. It was selectively eating the poison ivy, and you've got to love an animal that will eat poison ivy. So in the wintertime, as I said, they don't hibernate. In the wintertime, they eat the cambium layer of the bark of the trees. And in really tiny sticks, they might eat the whole thing, but it's not the wood that they're eating. It's that under layer of bark. That's the layer of bark that transmits the nutrients up and down for the tree. So that's where the most nutrition is in that. They store their freshly cut branches to eat over the winter. So they tend to take down trees in the fall in order to create a food stash. So they cut down a tree. They will then go back and cut down each individual branch and drag the branch down to the water, and that's called a beaver dragway. They bring the branch down to the water and anchor it not too far from the lodge. They'll put the thick end down in the mud at the bottom of the pond. They'll pile up mud and rocks around it so that you end up with the bottom of it at the bottom of the pond, and the twigs will be just sticking up out of the top. When that happens, if it freezes, they can be completely frozen in, and they still have access to food because their lodge entrance is underwater, so they can swim out underwater, go to the food stash, cut off a branch, and bring it back inside to eat. So that's what they're eating in the wintertime, and that's why they're cutting down trees in the wintertime. So in this picture, you can see the lodge is in the distance, and then it's completely frozen, and all those little twigs sticking up are the food stash that these beavers made. And this was the same one that was up off of Great Seneca Creek. And if you're not sure, you wouldn't know, but that's definitely the food stash for those beavers. As you go further north, you get bigger and bigger food stashes. There are beavers all the way down into Florida, and Florida beavers don't bother doing food stash. They're never going to be iced in. It's not something they need to do. And you can see in the foreground here that they've chewed the bark off of a tree that's going to die and fall down. So beavers really do have wonderful family values. They mate for life. If they do lose a mate, they will have another mate, but they do mate for life. They live in colonies based on family ties. Beavers typically have 2 to 4 babies called kits every year, and then those young will stay with their parents for 2 years. So you'll end up with the older ones kind of like teenagers that'll help out babysitting for the little ones. They learn about dam building and repairing and building things. After 2 years, the males will leave home looking for new territory, and the females will stay near home. The males will go upstream or downstream. They will also cross overland looking to a different watershed. So now and then you might see a beaver that's been hit by a car on the side of a road, and you think to yourself, okay, I've seen a beaver here. Could I have possibly seen a beaver? We're miles from any river, well, they may go 3 or 4 miles overland to get from one watershed to another in search of females. So that's an unfortunate, probably most likely was a young male. The females stay near their parents. So the first lodge that you see is called a mother lodge, and the subsequent lodges are called daughter lodges. And they have actually done DNA studies, and in fact, the females in the secondary lodges are in fact all the daughters and sometimes granddaughters of that first lodge. And interesting enough, although they typically have 2 to 4 kits every year, they will
About beavers.
And if you could mute yourself, please. So they will, when colonies get bigger, there seems to be a sort of a natural birth control that happens. They tend to have fewer kits when they have a larger colony, which is interesting. No one knows the mechanism for that. So here's a little beaver in Great Seneca Creek eating a leaf. They tend to okay, Amy, could you mute yourself, please? Thank you. So this beaver, they will actually roll up fresh leaves and eat them like little cigars. Very cute. And they are actually pretty curious. If you see them out in the evening, they're nocturnal, but they may be out in the evening, early morning. It's not unusual to see them during the day. They will definitely check you out, and they will probably then disappear and do what's called a slap dive. They dive deep into the water, and as they go down, they slap their tail on the surface, and that's very loud. It's quite startling if you didn't know a beaver was nearby, and that noise serves as a warning to any beavers in the area, and the sound carries quite a distance both above water and below water. So all the beavers learn that, uh-oh, there could be danger. Everybody goes underwater. So this is a mother and baby beaver. They quite the good parents. So beavers and the environment, a lot of people refer to beavers as very destructive, which I find a little ironic given that we're all sitting around in houses primarily made of wood that we took down or someone took down, and on lots that were cleared from woods, and everything that we use, paper was from wood, etc. They're certainly not more destructive than people are. Beaver ponds are very beneficial for habitat for all kinds of amphibians, fish, turtles, salamanders, ducks, geese, insects. A lot of fishermen think beavers eat fish. That's not true. In fact, the beaver ponds and the dams and the lodges in particular provide wonderful habitat for little baby fish to hide out so the bigger fish can't eat them. They prevent flooding. All those series of small dams on creeks, they think that if there were as many beavers in the United States now as they were when Europeans first got here, all those big floods on the Mississippi River probably wouldn't happen. The ponds act as filtration systems, kind of like we have stormwater management ponds. The silt is retained, and they have done studies checking for pollution in water above stream and downstream from beaver ponds. And all of the enzymatic activity in the silt in the bottom of the pond actually breaks down pollutants. So you have cleaner water coming out of a beaver pond than going into it. When they cut down trees, those trees typically don't die. They sprout new leaves, new growth, which provides wonderful food for a lot of other herbivores that like eating that. Rabbits, groundhogs, deer browse on that a lot. So here are some Canada geese next to a beaver pond. This particular area had lots and lots of wood ducks. Maybe 20 or 30 of them would come in every night, but they were very shy. I could never get a picture of the wood ducks, but it was something that they came to every night on this beaver pond. Here's a little northern two-lined salamander. This is actually taken through the water. Lots of little things like that water in the beaver ponds. They are also excellent for fire resilience. This picture is from an article that was in National Geographic. Out west, you can see when you've had a huge wildfire, everything's gone except where the beaver pond was. And that beaver pond retains water not just in the pond, but it raises the groundwater level all around. So you get that green vegetation that doesn't burn as easily. So when you have a drought, there will be some retention of water, and you'll get scenes like this where everything's gone. And this is where animals will take refuge, and then they provide, all of the vegetation provides seeding for reseeding this area. And here, there's another one. This one was in another article in Scientific American. Very obviously, all those trees that have died in a fire, and yet there is still that little patch of green where the beavers were. So they have a long cycle. Once the food is scarce,
One of those Seneca
beavers
things
will
that Kevin did.
leave, and
He was going to be, no, well, he did bugs. She's doing beavers.
yes, Amy, can you hear me?
Oh.
Maybe you could mute yourself, Amy, because we can all hear you. So once the food is scarce, beavers will just leave. Once they leave, the dam will collapse because no one's maintaining it. And that pond that was once a pond is very fertile because of all the silt and things that have built up into it. So you get a very large fertile meadow. Eventually the trees will grow back and the beavers will probably move back in again, because if it was good beaver habitat once, it's probably good beaver habitat again. I had several pictures here about a colony on Long Draft Branch in Seneca Creek State Park, 4 lodges and 6 dams. After 4 years, they moved on. This park did not do anything to discourage them. They just decided they'd had enough of that. Maybe there were too many floods, I don't know. But now they have moved back up to Clopper Lake. So Clopper Lake now has 6 beaver lodges on it. They are, at least 4 of them are active. One of them I know is not active. One I'm not too sure about, but we do have some nice active lodges on Clopper Lake now. So coexisting with beavers, they've been very beneficial. They are actually quite easily discouraged from taking down trees. Any metal barrier, you know, they need those teeth. They will not bite through metal. So you can put a wire fence, hardware cloth around any trees you want to save, and then they'll be happy to take down trees you don't want. When I had beavers next to me, when I used to trim the trees in my yard, I would cut off anything big for firewood. Everything small I would just drag down to the beaver pond and leave it on the side, and the next morning it would be gone. It was wonderful. There are some deer deterrents that work that you could spray on your trees, but they would have to be reapplied frequently because it rains. There is something called a beaver baffle that can be installed to control the water level. So this is hardware cloth that's been put around a tree. When you put this around, you want to make sure that you cover it all the way down, and even the roots, because if the roots are exposed, they'll have bark on them and the beavers will chew on that. So you have to be careful what you're doing when you put something on, whether it's a fence, fencing, or hardware cloth. This is wire fencing. Base of the tree is nicely protected. They recommend putting it at about 6 inches away from the tree, mostly to allow growth of the tree, so you don't have to come back too often to get that, make it bigger. So you can also paint your trees. Beavers do not like the taste or the feel of sand in their mouths. So if you mix 1 ounce of a coarse sand, just like builder sand or mason sand or fine sand that you can just buy a bag of it at Home Depot, 8 ounces to 1 quart of exterior grade latex paint. And you want to use latex because you want the tree to still be able to breathe through it. Mix that up, paint it on your tree. You can even take, if you really want to, you could take a piece of the bark in and they will match the color for you. So it really can be pretty effective and not as ugly as having lots of fencing around your trees. If you've got a lot of trees to do, 20 ounces of sand to a gallon of paint. You want to paint them. You know, we don't get that much snow here. You could probably get by with 3 feet, but maybe 4 feet is the general recommendation, because if there are 2 feet of snow and the beaver's on top of that, they can get up to 4 feet. It is not recommended for young trees under 6 feet tall to paint them. Those you could want to fence. This does have to be renewed, but every maybe 2 to 3 years for that. And this has been used in public parks in various places very successfully. So baffles are called flow control devices or beaver deceivers. And there are various types of them. What you're doing is you're putting a pipe basically into the pond, through the dam, and out on the other side. And you've got to be really clever about this, because if the pipe, the reason this has a down facing elbow here is that if the beavers hear running water going into that pipe, they will dam it. I said they like to dam things, they will dam that. So there are various ways of trying to get that. So if you just wanted to know how to build one, beaver deceiver, you'll find lots of different examples. This one's a Clemson flow controller. It's got on the right side, they put actually wire fencing with metal poles around a long perforated pipe that goes through the dam, and that gives you a level. It seems like a lot more work, this one. But again, that could be used. Flow control pipe, this is kind of like the same idea. You do have to anchor it. You've got something in. All the small little holes are so that you're not getting a lot of flow there that beavers can hear. Tube and fence, there's a little cage in there so that the beavers can't get to it. Sometimes if they will try and dam around the cage, but another one to go. This particular one you can go and see tomorrow at North Creek in Montgomery Village. It's on the opposite side of Montgomery Village Avenue from North Creek Lake. Montgomery Village has put in this beaver dam. There are now at least 3 or 4 dams up here, and there are now 2 lodges on this North Creek. It's right behind the pickleball and tennis courts. You can see this from a paved walkway, and good for them. They have decided to try and live with these beavers. So they've put in this flow control device because the water was getting suspiciously close to the sidewalk. So now it's gone, it's being maintained at a lower level, and they seem to be quite happy, both the beavers and the people walking by. So this is a sign that was up in Seneca Creek State Park about people complaining about beavers taking down the foods, but they take down trees, they might increase the wetlands. All those wetlands environments are where a lot of insects lay eggs. And then the other species that we like to see, like the fish, the ducks, the frogs, the turtles, the birds, everything else eats those insect larvae and adults. So wetlands are a very biodiverse habitat. They rival actually the rainforest in number of species. So we're quite happy to have beavers in the state park. When they're taking down trees across the trail regularly and the rangers have to go out with a chainsaw, they sometimes get bored with that, although usually they're happy to have an excuse of getting outside and do a little chainsaw work. So we're quite happy to live with the beavers. If you need to put up a beaver flow device, there are agencies, if you're a nonprofit organization, that might give you some help. They're not that expensive though. There are companies that do this as a living, and you can find someone that will come out, but it's not that expensive to do. So if you have your homeowners association had something, there are ways to control them. Here are some really good books about beavers. Lily Pond, Beaver Sprite, that's out of print, but I think that you can still find it. My Beaver Colony was about colonies in European beavers and on a river. And then the latest one is Eager, The Surprising Secret Life of Beavers and Why They Matter by Ben Goldfarb. The website, Beavers, Wetlands and Wildlife, they have a lot of links, a lot of information. I think they actually have the Beaver Sprite book reprint available for you to purchase. And that's a nice resource for lots of things about beavers. And it just so happens that BeaverCon, the conference about beavers, which is a biennial conference every 2 years, is coming back to Hunt Valley, Maryland, this coming June. I went to this in 2020 and it was really interesting. It was a 3-day conference and it's amazing all the research that's being done. A lot of it was centered around out west, and they do studies about what happens to the fish population. Are beavers good or bad for the salmon run, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody who's interested, early bird registration ends March 15th. This is really, that was a very fun conference. I would actually highly recommend it. So that's all I had. Does anyone have any questions? And I'm going to stop this share just because then I can't see anyone otherwise. All right. Anyone have any questions? Oh, I see something in the chat.
Yes, there's a great comment in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. That's a lovely talk.
There's a lovely beaver. There's a very large active beaver lodge on Lake Frank. And if you're at that beaver lodge and you look up, facing the lake, look up to your right, you can also see an active eagle nest.
All right. So feel free to ask any questions. I am going to stop the recording, I think, at this point.
Thank you, Mary Kay.